Can you imagine? Anyway.
No.
Hello, group. All right. So what would you like to talk about?
How do you go about approaching your budget, setting up your budget for the school?
Right. So when I look at our budget and all the money that we have, no, kidding, we don't have a lot of money. But when I look at the budget, I always, my first and foremost is how can I protect the instructional core, to protect the kids? And how can I wrap our resources to make sure that we can maximize the funding that we get to enhance the classroom experience? So that's usually where I always start. Hopefully the personnel piece is taken care of. When the back of the day when they would give us one big lump sum, that was always dicey. They have not done that in years, and when I say they, our district, San Diego Unified, has not done that. But in the past, there was a time long ago where they would give you a lump sum, and you had to buy teachers, you bought counselors, you bought clerical staff, you bought custodial staff, and you would have to build your school from ground up every year. They moved away from that because of all the turmoil it would cause at school sites about bumping and layoffs and things like that. So our district has decided to give us a formula for employment, for the people you need to run school. And they come up with a formula, and then they hand that out to the staff, or to the school sites. I'm thankful for that, because that helps Marshall at least maintain a good employee side of the house. I don't ever have to worry about that piece because it's given to us. What I do though is, with the money that they give us, is the cash that they give us. It's what do you do to enhance the classroom experience. And so over the last 3 years, maybe 4 years, the employee part of the budget has been taken care of, which, again, like I said, I'm thankful for. And so all I've had to worry about is the money. How do you distribute the money? At Marshall Middle School, we do not have any Title I funding, any categorical funding, so we just have one pot of funding. At other schools, some schools can have 8 different pots of funding, or 10 different pots of funding. My husband's school, for example, has 6 different pots of funding. But at Marshall, we only have one pot, and it's called the general fund, to the fact that because of our student population, this funding is the most flexible funding we can have. I don't have strings attached. Other schools, when they have their one flexible funding pot, but then they have other pots of money. Those pots of money come with strings attached. Title I, for example, comes with strings attached. You have to do certain things, like spend, I think, 10% of that budget must be on professional development, and you have to document that. So some pots of money, a good majority of them, will have strings attached, but the general fund doesn't, and so we have a general fund at Marshall. But what I do with that general fund is I go, okay, I have X amount of dollars. What am I going to do? And that's where, as a principal, when you're new to the school, you look back at what your previous predecessor has done and see, because there's always a roadmap. And you look at that roadmap and you think, was this good? Was there something that we could improve upon? Was there money being spent that really should be spent in that manner? For many years at Marshall, we did not have homework zone. We used to have it. It was very popular after-school program that we had. For several years in a row, we couldn't offer it, but it was one of those things that parents would ask for, students would ask for it, and in this particular year, the 14-15 school year, I had enough money to bring it back. And that's been great. It's been very popular. There's a good at least 50 kids per day that are going into that after-school club, and I'm paying the teacher to run that. So it's worthwhile for students. But you have to, when you have a popular thing like that, but you have to weigh it against other things. So, like for example, the last several years I didn't have it. I didn't buy Homework Zone, and the reason I didn't buy it is because I was putting money towards, in our case, our gifted and talented program, our instructional supply program, our budget. I had to weigh out: do I spend money on a teacher's salary to run Homework Zone 2 days a week for an hour each day, and spend money there, or do I and forfeit the fact I can't provide money for a good number of students when only 50 students, for example, in this case, 100 students a week actually take part? I'd weigh that out against 800
Right.
students. You have to weigh that out. Like, if you can have everything, great. Buy it all. Spend their money. Spend. But if you have to start making decisions, I always go back to how many students is this serving? What's the impact of that? And will I get more bang for my buck? And when I say that is, will we increase academic performance? Will we decrease the achievement gap?
Right. What's the leverage?
What's the leverage for that?
Now, you worked at PB,
Yes.
and you had categorical funds
Yes.
there. So, was there a rule of thumb that you generally followed in figuring out? Because, and the reason I'm asking, I would have known anything about this, but the guy who gave our lecture said that you should use those categorical funds first, and then so leave all the unattached money till later, so that you.
Correct. Yes.
So I can.
So let's talk about that. So with a categorical funding, there's, like I said, there's strings attached.
Right.
But typically those strings that are attached, it is purely for academic achievement, and it's purely for closing the achievement gap. So what he means by that is, for example, let's take Homework Zone. If Homework Zone is open to anybody and not just students who are below grade level, that is something that would be good for the whole student body. But if you have a budget that should only support students who are not meeting grade level standards, or below a 2.0 in GPA or so forth, then you want to use the money with strings attached to support those kids first, so that your general fund can be used for a Homework Zone that could help more students. So when I used Title I funding, I had to be really strategic on what I was funding it for. How is this making leverage with those particular students who are not meeting grade level standards? Title I, and these are students who have poverty in their lives. They're English learners. They're students of color. They're poor students. So you have to think about, okay, use all that money, but use it wisely, because it should have a direct impact on students. And there are rules that districts give out. Well, I'm assuming other districts do this, but that give schools saying, in order to spend this funding, for example, Title I, 10% has to go to PD. That could be substitutes. It could be conference time. It could be maybe compensation to teachers to have them spend planning after school, but you have to watch for that because you could be audited for that. But then there's things that they'll say, but you cannot buy a vice principal, because a vice principal is to help all students, not just a targeted group.
It's targeted, and they want the interventions to be targeted.
Exactly.
And professional development to help students who need attention to these basic skills.
Exactly,
right?
and like
catching them up.
And instructional materials that are targeted for
that particular
English learners, for students who can't read at grade level. And when you write in our district, we have to write justification. So when we put $1,000 towards instructional supplies, you have to list what those instructional supplies are. If you say I'm buying highlighters, you're going to probably get questions for that. If you're saying I'm buying instructional materials that are like English learner materials, or whatever material that you're looking for, a reading program, Rosetta Stone, things like that.
Rewards.
Jamestown rewards.
Or buying a resource teacher,
or
paying for a resource,
exactly.
hiring a resource teacher for that targeted purpose.
Exactly.
But you have to also include a narrative that goes along with it as a rationale and a justification.
And then not only do you have to do this for your district, but all categorical funding has to be approved by your school site council. So then you go to your school site council, which is a group of parents and teachers that you basically pitch your budget to. Now, at Marshall, I pitch a budget. I share and show all where I'm going to put our money for Marshall. And if teachers and parents around the table don't agree with me, that's okay. I don't need approval because none of those budgets need approval that
Right.
we have. But when I was at PB, when I was at some of my other schools that I've been at, you need to make sure you can justify why you're buying a resource teacher, or why are you buying a teacher to lower
Right.
class size, or why are you buying Jamestown or Rewards or some of these other programs, Learning Upgrade, for
Right.
example. Why are you buying that? And you have to justify that. And then as you talk about how much Learning Upgrade has helped your scores or helped students achieve, then you're kind of at the mercy of the group because they have to approve it.
Yeah.
7-1.
So
8
you
to
have to
1.
really know how to present your and it really needs to be a sound argument.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like a lot of these kinds of decisions are based on the demographics and the student needs. And so you have to have a really clear assessment
Right.
of what your student needs are, and that population can change. Demographics
Year
change
to
every year,
Exactly.
and you're constantly having to shift and rethink about staffing and
Right.
supplies.
And even though, and then we're speaking about categoricals, I do that
Right.
annually, even just with my one little measly budget, which is so flexible. And at any point in time, I can call up our district budget office and say, hey, I put 2,000 towards conferences, move 1,000 to copy paper. I could easily make that. I can make that decision on the phone by
Because
myself.
none of it is categorical. You
I
have
don't
the
have
decision.
to get approval from anybody. But if I was doing that for Title I, I'd have to go ask the school site council for approval and then call up my budget person. But I'd have
And submit in writing. This is what it's for. This is what it is.
Yep, and then show in writing.
And the minutes
the
from
minutes from the meeting that it was approved.
So this whole thing about the local, what is it called? The
LCAP.
LCAP, the LCAP.
Mhm.
Now,
Local
is that
control something.
yeah? And that's
Hi,
not.
everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Hey, good night, Dave. That is not something that is impacting you because this district is the major architect for your staffing.
Right.
They're the ones who decide what basically the staff is going to look like.
Right. They tell us you are getting funded at 30-1.
Right. So you're going to
So-
have these are your CPUs.
This is what you got.
get.
Right.
For teaching staff and for support staff, they have a formula for all that.
And they just.
And
do
did
it.
you ever have to do that yourself, like from the ground up?
Yes, several
That's-
years ago.
that's
what
where
I
you
was
started.
Speaking about that in years past, they give you this huge lump sum, and like right now, I don't know what I should know it right. Our operating budget is 4 million, 5 million, and that's including every single thing you could possibly think of to operate this school. And they used to give that as one big lump sum.
And you had to design how many teachers you're going
Right.
to hire, how many support staffs, how much you're going
Right.
to allocate for supplies and for everything.
And that's where you got schools where I was when I did have control over my entire from personnel to instructional supplies. I was one of those principals that when we had to nip and tuck where we couldn't buy all the people that we had this year for next year, I would never say, you know what, I'm going to reduce the entire office staff and leave one person. I'm going to get rid of both vice principals, all counselors, all office staff, leave one person so we can put all the money towards the classroom. Now, not to say I'm all for the classroom, but you can't chop off all your hands and
Infrastructure,
feet and
right.
infrastructure to say, oh, look, we've maintained class sizes at 25, but then I'm here every day from, morning till midnight,
no.
or we have one office person, and unfortunately there were schools where principals would do away with like a tech person, a site tech, both vice principals, so what happens is schools like that became so fragile because there'd be like one or two people in the office
Yeah.
to run a school that's over 1,000 people, and And that's where, you know, yes, your class sizes were kept low, but what's the impact on that? Oh, you don't have any counselors.
Yeah, you've killed the goose that lays the golden egg.
Right.
You can't, it's not sustainable.
Right, and so you have to, like, whenever I
That
look
balance.
you have to nip and tuck. I hate having to tell a teacher we don't have a job for them for the following year, but you nip and tuck at every little place, and when you nip and tuck around the whole organization, although it hurts, you're not killing your organization by killing your infrastructure.
Right.
And
So the
the LCAP.
LCAP. If we were a school district where you had to build your budget from the ground up, then the LCAP would come into play in terms of everything that you do through our school council, like all of your decisions, right? That would have to be based on local needs, the needs of the school and the school population. And that's the idea behind it? Is that your understanding of the LCAP?
From my understanding, the LCAP seems to have a lot of flexibility. So and to be honest, I'm not as well versed with some of the requirements through LCAP because it hasn't, quote unquote, impacted us here at Marshall. Like, I haven't had to answer to anybody about it.
Because the district actually creates the formula. They're handling that.
Yeah, and I know that, like, for example, our district has created the 12 standards that they are answering through the LCAP, and whether it's like teacher leadership, or teacher quality, principal quality.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Rigorous curriculum. There's
parent community involvement, partnership. Yeah.
There's several 12 areas, and it's aligned to the Vision 2020 that our district came up with. So, but those 20 standards is how they say, okay, look at all these standards. How are you putting your budget towards those standards? Now, when I built this year's budget, there was a survey where I had to, even with a general fund, look through every single expenditure and then tie it to each of one of the 12 outcomes. And so I think
which
that's
is kind of a little bit like action research. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's my understanding of how LCAP's set up.
Yeah, and so when I built the budget February of last year, after I finished it, it looked great. Then I had to answer the survey, like, where did, line item number 1, what value does that support?
Right. Right, and that's good. I mean, I think that's a really good thing to do, because you don't want to be spending money that's not aligned with the outcomes, the desired outcomes.
Exactly.
Well, Michelle, I want to let you get to your aren't you going to pick something up at
meeting?
That's your meeting, that really important meeting you're going to. But thank you very much.
Of course,
I appreciate that. This is awesome.
Okay.